as writers, what should we be keeping in mind, given that we don't know if the person reading it is neurodivergent or neurotypical? One of the things we do when we're planning out a written piece for our clients is we will do sort of like a reverse engineering of where we would like them to be when they've finished reading it versus where they are when they first pick it up, because we really want to get into that emotional state. I think Rory talked about visuals, and having visuals there to learn, or maybe that was UK, I don't know. And Sue talked about the words and how the words are what get through to her. So obviously we've got the words there. We can consider having visuals in the mix too for people who learn better that way. But in terms of the writing itself, what should we be thinking about? What should we go away and research further to make sure that our writing is resonating with neurodivergent and neurotypical people?
I can answer quite simply and sweetly and shortly, I hope, which is that because I love uh the reframe and I don't see the point in going round on the problems. Uh and so the whole point is uh the reframe being that we're responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, actions, no matter what. Uh to take care of ourselves first and then we're able to take care of other people. And so if we want to and the neurodiversity piece is the piece that I believe is like if the more people understand neurodiversity, that's a neutral ground to go, well, everyone reacts, responds, learns in their own way, like we were just talking about as well. And I call it neurocreativity.
Yeah,
Neuro
perfect
neuro
segue into talking about your books.
Yeah, my books are the whole thing around being responsible for what we're creating with our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And so neurocreativity being well, I call it neurocreative leadership because it's not about standing on a stage, although that's what I've chosen to do and learn about leadership in that way to be able to share from my personal perspective. But it's also about how someone would lead their lives in a relation, in any relationship or the relationship with themselves first. So neurocreativity being the thing that helps me understand the glue of that process, that it's highly related to the idea of the science of neuroplasticity, and whatever we repeat glues and becomes a habit or then a belief and then a focus, or the focus what we're focusing on. So um neuroplasticity, neurocreativity is what will, if we take hold of that, then we can move forwards. And so with that creativity process, actually understanding that, that's the thing about it being, it could be say it's about artistry and quotes and things like that, or it's how I organize my day, how I organize my priorities, and noticing what's possible to change quickly and what is consistently and daily task. And if it's like with the ADHD or ADHD traits, it's like, well, every single day I have to consistently choose to stay focused in front of people and be taking in all this information and learning how to not take in that information or not, the idea of eye contact or hypersensitivities or different things that go on that I can't switch off, or that I'd like to be able to remember to do something subconsciously, like clean teeth every single day. But no, it has to be conscious action every single day. And if that's the case, that's the case. But I own it, and I own it through fun and reframing and mental fitness. So there you go.
Yes. No, I love that. And actually, it reminded me, I was just talking to Andrea, who's on the call yesterday, about a poem that she wrote when she was younger. And she's just recently extended the poem a little bit to incorporate some of her more recent transformation. And I'm not somebody who's really appreciated poetry much in my life, if I'm honest. I don't really get it. But I read this poem and I was like, wow. And it made me cry. And then it made me cry the next time I read it. And I said to her, like, let's collaborate and do something with this because it's just such a powerful message. And she said that she incorporates visuals into the poem so that you can see it. You can see what's happening to the character. And I said, that's why I like it, because I haven't seen that before. Yeah, exactly. So that's what it reminded me, because we will talk about quotes and yeah, exactly. Um, I need to be able to see it and feel it in order to be captivated by it. And the words themselves are not enough for me. And so I think that's just such a good example. Yes. Well, you will see the poem, Sid, because I'm going to write about it on my Substack, so you'll get it. Sue, what do you want to add
Well,
there?
my book just flashed across the screen. Kay was holding my book
Oh,
up.
there it is. Okay, great.
I just felt, okay, she's flipping it. Now I need to speak. So my book primarily came out of the shadow work that I spoke about earlier, and how it turned into alchemy to me being a better version of myself, or a different version of myself. So the art either comes through the intentional creativity, the art either comes, and then I write around the symbolism and the energy I get off the canvas and how that influences the character. Or I start with writing, like Phoenix Poppy, Nina Namaste, Silent Silky. There's about 25 characters, and they're all supported by a painting I've done or a photo I've taken. And I've got a trilogy in the pipe. So I've got two more books that are partly written. And by that, I mean they've either got paintings that need words, or they get words that need paintings. That's why they're not finished, because I have to get the inspiration for one, and then the other follows,
Yeah.
and it depends what comes first. And so the first one is called Misunderstood No More, because I want to disrupt globally the ignorance that and the misunderstanding around neurodiversity. The second one is Mute No More, which is all about the silent word of the selective mute and the mute, and people who don't have the courage to use their voice. And what I've realized, that it isn't just the autist or the neurodiverse person that struggles with the communication. So actually it then becomes a bit like what Kay said, it becomes personal and transpersonal. And then the last one is Fragmented No More, which leads to the whole thing we were talking about, parts integration. And I'm fragmented no more, because I now see myself as a lot more, not saying I'm complete work in progress. I mean, a complete done piece of art. I'm a work in progress, but I see all the integration that I've already done, and then I can build on it with a system and then help other people do the same.
And Kay, just to wrap things up, tell us about your new book and where and what it's about and why we should take a look at it.
Thank you. Well, Rain and Change was my original book back in 2020. I've now got 4 books. And when you were talking about poetry, that reminded me, I wasn't going to get this one out, but Darker Than Dark is a 50-verse poem about the journey that I went through with my own depression through to recovery. So once I get past the intro, Darker Than Dark, it starts with very dark imagery and works through to some really colourful images. And it's all about using mindfulness and colour as that recovery journey from depression to rebuild that resilience. So that was my second book. That's followed on by one which is Mindfulness of Flowers, my third book, but that is not poetry, that's mindfulness text to support it. And that's all my own photography in there as well. So where Rory's put photography with his prose, Sue's used art in this book. So we've all got very similar formats there. This is all my own photography. So Brain Unchained is more of an exercise book, very in-depth. So when you were asking about how do we approach that, for me it was what does the reader need to know, like you said, and feel at the end. And for me it was about giving a teenager a gradual journey of learning step by step and gradually increasing how that learning integrates. And bearing in mind that if they're in a state of depression and finding it difficult to learn, I had to do it in small snippets of information and break the format up a lot to make it like having a conversation across the table with them. And then every chapter in there has got a toolbox at the end in a separate box, a little toolbox snippet for parents in how to use that with the teens. So for me, I had a lot to think about from the perspective of the teenager and the parent to put that together and how they could integrate that learning and how it could transform lives. And I know it has, because even my daughter was at a group one day, a support group, and she phoned me up afterwards and said, "Mum, I'm really proud of you today." I'm like, I've not heard this before. This is good. But somebody else in that group was talking about how she'd found a book and read the first chapter, and something about this journey and this relating an emotional journey to a map had helped her to get out of an abusive relationship and turn her life around and saved her and her children. And that chapter that she described was from my book, and my daughter knew what she was talking about. And it was a story about a journey that I took to London when I was in my early 20s and I got lost. I wasn't meant to be going to London, but I did go to London because I'd got lost. But it's in the book. So if you want to know about that, that's in Brain Unchained. But the most recent book, excuse all the tags because I've been reading from it, is 30 Love Values. Now, this one actually was inspired this year with a conversation with Rory, and I saw him shuffling some cards earlier. He might have thought he was doing it off screen, but I saw you doing it.
I'm always shuffling them.
Yeah.
It's my stim. It's my stim.
So we were having a conversation about the autism and values. And somewhere in there, I was like, hang on a minute. If so many people, including intelligent adults who are neurotypical, don't understand their emotions at this core level, how are they understanding their values and their boundaries and their barriers and how they integrate those values in relationships? No wonder there is such a big breakup sort of ratio in relationships, and it seems to be growing. And so that's where this book stemmed from, as I started to list all the values that I knew of in relationships, whether it was in interpersonal relationship with my children, with work colleagues, and also with ourselves, because our values with ourselves were important too. And that's where this came from. So I listed all these values and then built a chapter about each value in what it means, what the definition of it is. There's scientific facts about it in there, like research facts. There's 20 examples of how to integrate each value with a relationship. And there's another 8 examples of how to use a value to resolve setbacks in relationships. And then there is some other bits and pieces like quotes and things as well. So there's like 10 different sections to each chapter, but it's a really structured way of learning. And that for me was what I wanted with this, was a book that's really easy to just pick up and go, okay, whenever I open any chapter, I know what the structure is going to be 30 times over. So it's very easy reference. So that was the concept behind this one. So, and I've tried to make it very sort of friendly looking, because it was love values rather than the Brain Unchained, which my son chose the title of, by the way. And that's the other thing, when the titles got to hit. And I knew I didn't want it to be about the pits of stuck in a rut, depression, rock bottom, all of that, which goes with the diagram being at the bottom. I didn't want it to be about the light at the end of the tunnel, which is the top end of the emotional journey. I wanted it to represent that bit in the middle of the tunnel where he knew everything was going to be okay, but there was still work to do. So I ended up on the phone with my son during lockdown too and brainstorming some keywords and said, how did it feel for you? And he said it felt like my brain had been wrapped up in chains, but as I started to walk past the middle of that journey, he said it felt like they started to break free and fall away, and I felt lighter. And so when we put the words down and sort of jumbled around, that's where we came up with the Brain Unchained. So essentially my son chose the book title, and that was the last thing I wrote for the book, was the title. I'd actually written the book first, which is amazing. And again, with the 30 Love Values, that was a fairly given title for that one. But I'll tell you, both Sue and Rory's books are amazing, you know, and every book's got a different purpose. So Rory's is about that inner reflective personal development work. And yes, Sue's is as well, but it's about hers is great for understanding if somebody's neurotypical or they've got a different form of neurodiversity and they want to understand what it's like from that neurodivergent perspective of living that sense of being fragmented, but understanding the individual aspects of a personality. Sue's book is absolutely brilliant for that as well.